Welcome back to Insight on Cap Radio. I'm your host, Vicki Gonzalez. Terrible jobs are kind of a rite of passage when entering the workforce. We've all had those experiences that just test our limits and teach us what a breaking point truly is. From just gross situations to bad bosses, there really is no shortage of stories of workplaces that have gone amok. Take This Job and Shove It is the theme of this month's In a Nutshell storytelling series. It's taking place this Friday, April 17th at the Sophia in Sacramento. And two of the featured storytellers join us today. Jessica Robinson is a storyteller and author, and Claire Hennessy is the co-founder of 6 Feet Apart Productions. Welcome.
Hi.
Well, Jessica, I want to start with you. How did you get into storytelling in the first place?
Almost 20 years ago now, I went to an open mic, and the theme was Love Sucks, because the best stories are about things that don't go well. And I told a story about my first husband, who was no longer my husband, and people thought I was funny. So I got addicted to it.
Good. And the rest is history. And now they're kind of in line with, love sucks. Work can suck too. How did you feel when you got the prompt for this month's show? Did you have like a story that instantly came to mind?
I had a good dozen or so. So I really had to weed through some bad jobs and some bad situations. But I settled on one that I really wanted to tell here. So I'm excited.
Can you give us a little preview of your story without giving too much away?
Yeah, I used to work in the feature film industry, so it's really a story about me trying to be a team player working in the feature film industry in the 90s, back in the good old days of making movies.
Why do you think telling stories of when things just go bad, in the moment they feel like awful and you want to like tear your hair out, but with hindsight and some distance and some time, it's really entertaining to hear, and it's actually like a bonding experience with other people as well. Why do you think we get that way?
Well, I think there's a quote, and it's maybe Shakespeare, but I do not know who said it, but it's that humor is tragedy plus time and distance. And I think that's true for stories in general, whether they're funny or they're poignant or they're heart-wrenching. As long as you, the storyteller, have survived the situation, have healed from the situation, it's a great way to connect with other people, whether it's over ridiculousness or, brings tears to people's eyes.
Well, Carrie, I want to turn to you. Tell us about your journey into storytelling.
I suppose it was slightly different. I decided I was going to be a comedian. So I came out as being a comedian. And before I had a chance to really do anything, I went, luckily, my angel sent me on a workshop with someone who was a comedian and a storyteller. And she laid out very clearly what the path was for a comedian in America and what it was for a storyteller. And I went, aha, I do not want to be a comedian. I'm going to be a storyteller. And that had the added benefit that no one actually expects you to be funny in storytelling. And so if you're funny, it's like a lovely surprise. So there's no pressure.
And you also run a storytelling production company, right?
Yes.
6 Feet Apart Productions.
Yes, we started it at the start of the pandemic, just for a couple of weeks. And here we are 6 years later.
That's incredible.
In fact, Jessica and I we started an in-person show in Novato, and so because Jessica's here for In a Nutshell, I've grabbed her, and she's telling also at the Story Shuffle on Saturday. So we it's nice to sort of be supportive of other shows and other storytellers, and it's a very supportive industry, whereas I'm not sure that comedy is quite as supportive and friendly. Whereas storytelling is lovely.
Jessica, I see you nodding along.
Yeah, I have never tried to be a comedian, but I do love comedy. And if you go to a comedy show and you're not funny, if the person on stage is not funny, the audience will let you know. Whereas if you go to a storytelling show and like Claire, you're not funny, the audience will be very kind to you. So even just the experience of being on a stage, you can see the difference in storytelling.
So Claire, what did you think when you heard about the theme for this month's In a Nutshell?
Well, it was great. But actually I had, like Jessica, got a few, work things that I could easily have done. But then one really came to mind. It's like my first ever job. where I worked in an industry where I absolutely stated very clearly that I didn't want to work in, and then ended up getting a job there. And so I talk about that.
I feel like this theme, I mean, all the themes each month for In a Nutshell, like they do really land. They're so relatable, and that's the point, of course. But when hearing about this theme, like, jobs that suck, and I talked about this a little bit with Jessica, like, yeah, you immediately go to those moments in your life when it just kind of drove you crazy. But when you look back on them, there's kind of like a little bit of nostalgia to it as well. Are you looking forward to telling the story in front of an audience on Friday, Claire?
Yes, I am, definitely. And it's so interesting because I always wanted to be in some glamorous industry like the film industry. So it's so interesting to hear from the other side that possibly not quite as glamorous as I thought. But no, my story it's very light-hearted and funny, and nothing really that traumatic happened. But it's just a fun storybook. I did have some difficult times, let's say, within the job.
When crafting how you wanted to share this with an audience, kind of walk us through the process. I mean, are there some parts that are just like off limits on stage, or how did you go about deciding how you want to tell it on Friday? Jessica?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the show. So I think in a nutshell, I could say whatever I want. Some shows, you have to be family friendly. But in terms of what to share, I mean, when I started thinking about this story, the first time I thought it through, it was 30 minutes long, and that's kind of boring. So it's really about choosing which details support the story, make the point you're trying to make, and are cohesive enough for the audience to follow.
Do you have someone helping you with that edit process?
My dog listens to me a lot. He's a very good listener. But no, I do tend to run stories by friends, and I ran this story by my friend Jack, and I actually ran it with Claire a little bit too. So yeah.
How about you, Claire? Talk to us about your process.
Yes, I know Jessica always likes to run things past me because she knows I'm the better storyteller. We have a long-running feud, in case you didn't realise. But no, I mostly run my stories actually through my business partner, Regina Stoops, who's been on In a Nutshell too, and I think on your show. And so it's really great because then we can be really, really mean if we need to be. There's no holds barred, which is what you need if you really want to get a good story. And there's quite often when I'm crafting a story, there's these really lovely little bits that I want to include, but they don't actually, when you really look at them, they don't actually further the story. So they've got to be cut, like, cast your babies aside. And, Regina, for example, is really good at helping me do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know for myself, I need someone who can kind of like edit in that way because it feels, and understandably so, it is very personal to you. So it is good to have that sounding board. You finally, in an age where, we talk about and think that, our attention spans are like dwindling, spaces like this, people still love them, sitting in front, listening to a story, even if it is 30 minutes or even if it is 15 minutes long. Why do you think this is still so engaging and impactful for, I guess, society today, Claire?
Well, I think it's just because a lot of the times, I mean, not all the time, but if you're telling a personal story, they quite often go quite deep, or you're really getting a picture of somebody else's life, and it's fascinating. I mean, it really is fascinating to listen to people. And then in the story shuffle show that I have, it's any genre, so it could be a traditional story, but also that's really fascinating as well because you can compare the theme to something that's going on in our life now. But there's something about being in person, listening to people standing there in front of you with all their funny little mannerisms that I have, and it just engages you, and you become so connected to what they're saying.
Claire Hennessy and Jessica Robinson are two of this month's storytellers for In a Nutshell. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be a great time on Friday.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you so much.
The show takes place on Friday, April 17th at the Sophia in Sacramento. We have more information on our Insight page.